Abraham Lincoln to Fanny McCullough, written on December 23rd in 1862. This letter is one of heartfelt condolence, sound and practical advice on the grieving process, as well as giving us a picture of Abraham Lincoln's empathetic character. Looking at the letter itself, a reader can identify that the words are moving by themselves, but having some background and context provides a deeper meaning to the text. Abraham Lincoln writes this letter at the end of 1862, which by all accounts is a huge year for Abraham Lincoln. A lot happens. His son Willie dies at the beginning of that year from disease. There are quarrels and issues with his top general, George McClellan. He's pushing this new national strategy of emancipation. There are heavy Union losses and marginal victories at Antietam and Fredericksburg. And then this is all compounded with issues in his cabinet by December, dissension within his cabinet. So it's within this context that Abraham Lincoln is writing this letter to Fanny. He starts out the letter and says, "It is with deep grief that I learn of the death of your kind and brave father." Here Lincoln is referring to Lieutenant Colonel William McCullough from Bloomington, Illinois. They would have met when Lincoln was traveling on the circuit court. William McCullough ran in a similar social circle with Leonard Swett, who was a prominent Illinois attorney, as well as Judge David Davis, who by the end of 1862 was serving on the Supreme Court. William McCullough was the circuit clerk for McLean County, and he was an immensely popular politician from that town. People really liked him. They elected him sheriff for 3 terms, and then he was circuit clerk for 4 terms. He was also kind of an eccentric character. By the time the Civil War broke out, he was 49 years old and had to petition to serve for the Union because not only was he on the older side for someone fighting for the war, but he also had only one arm due to a thresher accident and was the kind of guy who at a local parade shot off his gun, and when it backfired he lost eyesight in one eye. So he was very enthusiastic to fight for the Union cause, and eventually he was killed on December 5th in 1862 when refusing to surrender to the Confederates. The letter goes on and says, "And especially that it is affecting your young heart beyond what is common in such cases." Those around Fanny are very concerned with the way that she's responding, and it sparks this correspondence, this series of letters between the characters from Bloomington, Illinois, and those in Washington, and it ends with this letter written by Lincoln. Leonard Swett is the first one to start this correspondence, and he's the one that has to break the news to the family because David Davis is in Washington, D.C. serving on the Supreme Court. So he writes to David Davis about how Fanny reacted. He says, "Fanny bore it composedly, but she soon partially gave way, and for a while we were alarmed for her consequences." So he's writing about the way that she's responding. His wife, Laura, is also very concerned with Fanny, and she also writes to David Davis. She says, "I write you in behalf of Fanny McCullough, afflicted, crushed, and I fear broken-hearted. I meant only to explain her condition. She has neither ate or slept since the tidings of her father's death, but shuts herself in her room in solitude, where she passes her time in pacing the floor in violent grief or sitting in lethargic silence." When David Davis receives these letters, he responds immediately to Laura. He says, "Your letter received last night caused inexpressible pain. Would that I was in Bloomington." And he writes this letter on December 21st, just 2 days before Abraham Lincoln pens his letter. Davis goes on in his letter to say, "I have written her today, and I will write her frequently. I will see Mr. Lincoln again. I prompted him to write her. He promised the other day that he would. The cares of the government are very heavy on him now, and unless prompted, the matter may pass out of his mind." So David Davis wanted to encourage Fanny in whatever way that he could. He was concerned for her, and another place in the letter says that he loves her as a child. And so he is talking to the President of the United States as a way to encourage Fanny to get through this trial. Lincoln goes on in his own letter, "In this sad world of ours, sorrow comes to all, and to the young it comes with bitterest agony, because it takes them unawares. This perhaps is the most significant line of the whole document because it's one of the only written expressions that we have of Abraham Lincoln referencing the death of his mother as a young man. He talks about to the young that it comes with bitterest agony. This is a feeling that Lincoln would have known well. The death of his mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, was a very pivotal event in his life, and it's even more so because Nancy Lincoln did not believe in an afterlife, and she made this known to her children. So it's possible that this was a very spiritually formative moment for Abraham Lincoln as a young child when his mother died, because her death in many ways was final. So when he's writing this to Fanny, he is writing from empathy. He understands how she feels. Lincoln goes on, "Perfect relief is not possible, except with time. You cannot now realize that you will ever feel better. Is not this so? And yet it is a mistake. You are sure to be happy again. To know this, which is certainly true, will make you some less miserable now. I have had experience enough to know what I say, and you need only to believe it to feel better at once." Here, Lincoln provides a very formulaic and easy solution to the problem of grief. Believe that you will feel better someday, and then you will. Now, it seems flippant to those of us who understand the grieving process, but there's something profound here that Lincoln is evoking his own personal experience in giving this advice. What he's really doing is giving Fanny an admonition towards perseverance, which is very like Lincoln to do, especially when he's writing to younger people. He understands the need for perseverance, and he boldly and candidly tells Fanny that this is what she should do. He ends the letter. "The memory of your dear father, instead of an agony, will yet be a sad, sweet feeling in your heart, of a purer and holier sort than you have known before." In this ending, Lincoln is attempting to forge meaning out of tragedy and encourage Fanny to persevere, to create something purer and holier from this tragedy than she would have known without experiencing it. Lincoln had proven that he could endure and persevere through conditions that would have probably shaken even the strongest of minds. He constantly searched for meaning in his trial, and he proved this over and over as he tried to forge meaning out of the Civil War and through his own personal loss. All of these abilities of Lincoln to reflect and show empathy contributed hugely to the good work that he was able to do as president and also as a human being, as we see in this letter.